Right, ready to go?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to episode 22 of Tall Boy Radio. Last time out we were talking about online gaming and we were without Gaz, but I'm pleased to say this week we have got the gang back together. Hello Gaz, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. Yeah, you? I managed to have a quick listen to the show last week. All good. Thought Ken came across pretty good, knowledgeable and stuff. So loved it. Love listening to it. Happy to be back this week, guys.
Nice one. Yeah, we had a lot of feedback actually saying Andy and Ken really knew their stuff. That was the common theme from all the feedback we had. Not sure why people felt the need to omit my name from that statement. I don't know, but
you just acted as the host. You just found that that's exactly what you did.
Yeah, turnips, Bob Ross. That's all that interested me. So this week we should have been doing the Mia Inn. We were going to be tasting some of their beer, talking a little bit about what's been going on during sort of the COVID-19 pandemic, how they're coping and how they're looking forward to opening. Spoke to Chris on the weekend. Brewery orders being what they've been, he couldn't provide us with the beer this week, so he's going to provide us next week. So we're going to receive the beer over the weekend. Try and resist the temptation not to drink it before Tuesday when we'll be recording. Hopefully Chris will be coming on and talking about his experience. However, I don't know if you've seen, they are planning on opening up on the Wednesday. So they are swerving the weekend and doing the Wednesday when it's a little bit quieter, which I think makes sense, to be honest with you. You see the logic in that. I think there's a lot of places going to be very, very busy. So before we get started, then, and we talk about the general premise of this episode, what are you guys drinking and what was the last film that you watched? Because it's a movie episode this week.
I'm actually drinking a Leffy.
Yes.
So I thought, you know what, I've got to pull out something better than just the standard sort of Budweiser or Carling. So I've gone for Leffy. Actually, I haven't got a decent glass, but it's in a Planet Hollywood pint glass, so I apologise to the pint glass. Last film that I watched, what did I watch? I actually can't. I don't know, actually. Me and Jenny watched one, I think, 2 or 3 days ago. To be fair, we've been watching a Netflix series about Mr. Epstein, so that's sort of in my mind at the moment, and I know that's not film, but which is decent, by the way, on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, it's pretty good.
Yes, I've started that one.
But I can't think of the film, actually, if I'm honest. I've got loads to go through on my list, though, so I'll hold those thoughts.
Cool. Andy?
Funnily enough, I'm drinking a Left as well.
Yeah, good man.
Oh, I feel left out now. I feel left out
now. Last film I watched was R.I.P.D. the other day with Jeff Bridges. And...
yeah, I've seen that.
Right.
That's pretty good.
It's all right. Yeah, that's the last one I watched.
Well, even though we haven't got a growler from the Mia, I have managed to source myself one. I'm drinking it's Limitless Red Willow, which is a hazy pale ale, and it's made with Mosaic and Citra hops. I'm not really a fan of Mosaic beers, but I've got to be honest, this one's pretty good. The ones I've tried have normally been double IPAs, which are quite strong, but this is 4%, and I actually think that works quite well with the hops. Last film I watched the other night. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. You seen that about Mr. Rogers, set in Pittsburgh?
No. I wonder why I watched that.
Indeed. Very good film, but I might mention it later just to tell you.
Okay. Teaser there. Quick teaser.
I suppose before we kick off, what's that on your head?
That. Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, I've cut myself shaving basically. Yeah, it's just come up. Andy's taking a snapshot. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for that. I was actually expecting a bit of stick about the shirt, to be honest with you. I thought I'll put this on. That'll distract from the plaster.
No. Shirt's good, mate. Plaster, not so good.
Yeah, fair play. Fair play. A couple other little bits of feedback then, just moving on swiftly, that we've received this week. I've had a couple of messages now asking why, if you own, is it the Alexa? What are they called? You've got one, haven't you guys? What are they called?
Yeah, Alexa, yeah.
Yeah, those things. I've got a Google Home. If you say, I'm not going to say it, but it will play Tall Boy Radio podcast on there. It doesn't work on Alexa. So this week I have applied to be on the TuneIn platform for podcasts.
Okay.
So as of tomorrow, you should be able to say that on your Alexa and it will play. And while I was doing that, I've also applied to be on iHeartRadio as well. That can take a couple of weeks to get sorted. Really like to get onto Pandora. Tiddy and China were talking about the differences made to their numbers, but it's US based at this point in time. So before we get started, then our good friend Bill shared a video with us this week, didn't he, on Facebook about Death Notes?
Yeah.
Did you?
I'm
did you
not
watch
convinced, if I'm honest. I'm genuinely not convinced. I mean, fair play to him, and obviously he's sort of working hard in the background as such. I'll be honest. I'll reserve judgment on the old eating ridiculously hot nuts, if I'm honest. So
I happen to know he has ordered them because he stuck in the message that he'd ordered me a T-shirt as well, and he wanted to know what size I was. And
double XL.
No, just XL. Just XL. I'm working up towards double XL.
Hopefully, it's got a built-in bib so you can wipe the tears.
Yeah, so he has ordered them. So I'm presuming I'm relying on Andy then to join me on this one.
I'll join him with that. Yeah.
Ah, good man.
Well, now I'm under pressure. Now I'm going to have a go at it now, aren't I?
Yeah, basically.
What could go wrong?
Hot
nuts, beer.
Yeah, what could go wrong? But when I said, yeah, that's fine, I got to be honest, I hadn't actually watched the video. I just skipped to the end and thought, he's making a bit of a meal of this, isn't he? But then I went back and I watched it. Average 13 million Scoville.
It's ridiculous, mate.
That's dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah.
A bit warm, yeah.
Bit warm. But
Just
speaking of T-shirts, though, did you check out the picture I shared on social media of the Tall Boy Radio T-shirts? We had the prototypes back for. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see them now. What do you think of those?
Good, mate.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Order me one.
Well, I've got you one. I've had 3 made. One in mine and Andy's sizes, which obviously is XL bordering double XL, and then one in your good self, the regular sort of large size. Yours was the black one, but I'm also looking at getting some pint glasses made. So when we sit down and we do the beer episode, that we've got some pint glasses to share. So I'm thinking like the mason jar as well, like with the handle on it. I think that'll look pretty cool.
Absolutely, one of them.
Cool.
Right. Slam it down.
That's it. Bang. give me the death nuts.
just give me one, and then I might actually eat off.
Damn, they're hot.
So this week we are doing an episode on movies. Now we're going to call this episode the best movie that isn't Shawshank, purely and simply because I know I'm a massive fan of the movie. Gaz, also massive fan of the movie, aren't you?
Massive fan, mate. It ranks number 1 in my all-time favourite films. And I could talk probably for half an hour, 40 minutes just about that film. But obviously, the sort of preamble to this was, I can't really talk about it because we're all going to talk about it. So I was like, right, okay, that's fine. But it does rank number 1. It ranks number 1 of all-time favourite films.
Yeah, great film. But Andy, you were less convinced by that, weren't you?
Yeah, it's a good film, but I wasn't blown away by it. Yeah.
Kim was the same. We've watched it a couple of times, and every time we watched it, she'll sit there. No, I've not seen this before. It's like, how can you forget this film?
It's one of those films for me that if it's on, I don't care whether I'm knackered. I don't care whether it's 2 a.m. 5 a.m., whatever time it is, if it's on, I have to watch it.
Have you ever? Sorry, go on. Have you ever read the book? Just out of interest.
No. I mean, I perhaps I should, because back in the day, I was quite a bit of a sort of Stephen King book fan as such, and obviously the reference to Rita Hayworth and which is sort of the poster that he has and stuff. I actually haven't read the book, and it's weird. It's one of those things that I've sort of seen the film, and obviously you get an impression as to what the characters look like from watching the film. So if I read the book and he described the characters differently than were cast in the film, I'd be a bit like, oh, it's just not Morgan Freeman, or it's just not. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I haven't read the book. I possibly will at some point, but I know obviously it's based on a Stephen King book, but the film, when I first watched it, I thought was like just a phenomenal film. Just the different bits about it, the characters, the storyline, the sort of the loneliness, the hope, all the sort of things that potentially we're going to talk about. And then I watched it for a second time and a third time, and every single time I just thought there's just little nuggets that you see every time you watch, there's little bits that you see that you think, you know what, I didn't notice that last time. And it's to me, well, as I said, it ranks. It's my favourite film of all time, so it ranks number one for me.
I'm pretty much on board with that. Is it up there number one? It's one of those films, like yourself, if it's on, I'll watch it. Even though it's, 3 hours long? I can't not watch it. I think it is an outstanding film. I have to say, I'm not a huge Stephen King fan. I enjoy his films, but not a huge fan of his books. I started reading The Shining. I thought it was shite. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't read it.
But it's weird because I've sort of read a few Stephen King books. So I've read The Stand, going back in the day, which is an exceptional book in my opinion. But I never felt as though there was a decent film of a Stephen King book. And actually, this is probably, without reading the book, and I know it's a bit of a sort of cockeyed way of looking at it, but without actually reading the book, this is probably the best film adaptation of one of his books, arguably.
You're not a fan of The Shining film, then?
The Shining film, yes, very good. Yeah. Loved it. Was it Overlook Hotel, whatever?
That's right.
Yeah, very, very good. But to me, this is a better film than The Shining. Although The Shining is a decent film, Jack Nicholson is fantastic and stuff, and obviously The Shining is quoted in many, many, many other films and stuff. But for me, Shawshank is a better film, just in my honest opinion.
I'd agree with that. So we've broken this down into 11 categories, which is a bit random. Probably 10 would be easier, but we've gone with 11. So we'll start. And listen, we know Andy's prepared because he told us 2 weeks ago he's prepared. So expecting big things, dude.
I wouldn't. I row in 5 minutes.
So the first category that we had listed actually is one of my favourite categories of films, and that's horror.
Andy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, who wants to start off? Andy?
Okay, so I found the list quite hard because I'm a big fan of action films and sci-fi, and I think like Jet Li and probably Clint Eastwood are my favourite actors in films. So horror is not a genre I tend to watch, but one film, it's probably my first horror film I remember. My dad lived in a pub in Sandbach, and so it's like I was upstairs above the pub. I was probably like, I don't know how old I was, probably 10 or 11, and I saw like he had a chunk of films. I thought, I'll put this on, and I'm watching it, and there's a mirror above my head. I don't know if that's some sort of clue. And I just remember like watching it, thinking, this is well scary. This, and there's like a mirror there, like lifting it out, like looking behind it and stuff. But it's Candyman.
Yes. All right, yeah.
So I don't know why. I think it's just the way it's filmed, and like it's not like a lot of films now. Horror films are just more about the jump factor, but this was just building suspense, and
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And I rewatched it as an adult, and I thought it's pretty good. It's not as scary, obviously, but I thought it's still a good film. But like I said, it's not a genre I tend to watch. But yeah, I just a little soft spot for Candyman.
There's an honourable mention, and lots of sort of film fans will say, "Oh no, it's terrible," but it was something that sort of scared me, I suppose, as a kid. Was Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger and that sort of character absolutely gave me the heebie-jeebies. Like seriously, like proper, like oh my god. But I think the one that I put on my list, the second honourable mention, and I don't know whether or not you can class it in the traditional horror genre as such, and it might be a bit of left field, but was Jaws. I remember watching that and thinking, oh my days, like the first time I saw that music goes, duh, 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 and I was like, oh my God, you can feel your heart going, and then you see the fin, and obviously now you look back and you think, oh my God, that the mechanical shark was terrible and all, but back in the day, it proper scared me. So a couple honourable mentions, sort of Nightmare on Elm Street, Jaws. But the one I've gone for is Friday the 13th.
Yes. I was going to mention that one. Yeah.
It's just, it literally is the ultimate sort of slasher, horror, teen type movie. You've got the sort of, the mask, and you've got the sort of, just a bit like the Jaws. You know, so you got, and Sid does a great impression of it, by the way. My brother Paul, who is affectionately known as Sid, does a great sort of impression. It's brilliant. So I think for me, Friday the 13th was in terms of the horror film, that's got everything for me, really.
Did you know then, as a point of the soundtrack, that was all right almost, wasn't it? That was never cha-cha-cha. It's taken from Betsy Palmer, who plays Jason Voorhees' mother in the first one, saying, "Kill her, mommy, kill her." She's sort of saying that, and it's taken from the kill and the mom, and that's just, so it's ma.
Oh, okay.
I apologise, so that's going to sound awful on here, but that's where it's taken from. But no, I'm absolutely with you on that. I think they are great films, and in terms of a film franchise, that one is probably my favourite. And then Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund in that. Robert Englund makes that character
brilliant.
There's something very creepy about him, and you do sort of get, I apologise, Robert, for saying this, a bit of a child molester vibe out of it, which is what he was, wasn't he? He was a child molester who the parents got together on Elm Street and burned him in a basement.
Yeah.
And so I totally take that. The two that I've picked then, actually, funnily enough, aren't featured in any of those ones I've just said I enjoy. The Exorcist, for me, is one of those films. The first time I watched that, I watched it with a girl I was seeing, and then I walked her home at the end of the day, and I felt genuinely creeped out. Yeah. There's something very, very unnerving about that. Absolutely brilliant. Like parts
by her, do you mean, or girl you were walking
no. I imagine she was creeped out by me.
Just whispering in her ear.
Let's go on a date. Let's watch this. Brilliant. But no, it is very, very unnerving film, and I remember walking back myself and feeling creeped out by it. And there's not too many a film that has that effect on me.
But it's strange because I suppose you go into the horror genre, you go for the traditional sort of slasher type horror, and you go for the gore aspect, and then I suppose you go for the more of the supernatural, psychological sort of horror in terms of something like Paranormal Activity and you know that sort of genre where you think, actually, you know what, it's the poltergeist, the supernatural, as opposed to the traditional slasher movie. I mean, you look at something, whether it's a snuff or a B movie, or even if it should be mentioned in this, is something like I Spit on Your Grave type film.
Yes.
You know, I mean, that is, shocking. That is shocking. And I don't know, I still to this day don't know whether it was, and this is going to sound awful, and I don't, was it real life footage? Was it made as a film? Was it, I don't know where it sits, but you watch that and it's like unnerving, really unnerving.
It is, and it's. I mean, it's originally the original title of that film actually was called The Day of the Woman, because the idea is that the woman came back and took the victims of the people who abused her. The remake, absolutely horrible, but we'll get onto that later. But that is, like you say, it is a very unnerving film. And a lot of the films that were made in the 1970s, and again, that film was banned.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know where you sit with those. A lot of those films being banned. I've seen quite a few of them, and like Last House on the Left is another one where the performances are phenomenal and uncomfortable. That make you think, actually, is that guy a little bit? His performance in that, literally, apparently, he was a terrible actor, didn't know how to act, so basically just turned up and stayed in character the whole film, and everybody else on the set was actually terrified of this guy. They thought he was a nut job.
Sounded normal.
Yeah, exactly. They just thought there's something wrong with him, but he wasn't. He just took it a bit too literally, because he just wasn't really a particularly good actor. But yeah, a lot of those films that were banned, truly, I mean, there was a few in there like The Greatest Little Whorehouse in Texas, starring Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton. It was banned without anybody ever watching. Mary Whitehouse wanted that one banned. It's got to be terrible. It can't be a musical involving Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds. So that one was briefly banned. But then there's other films like Cannibal Holocaust, which featured, I don't know if you've watched the full unedited version, like animal mutilation. They cut the face off a monkey, rip the guts out of a giant tortoise. Deeply, deeply upsetting. Should have been banned and should never have been unbanned, in my opinion. Yeah. I watched it, and it's one of those films I wish I'd never watched. I watched it purely because of its reputation, and it's one I regret. The other film that I mentioned, which is actually probably up there with The Exorcist for me, and I actually think is an outstanding film, not just an outstanding horror film, is American Werewolf in London.
Yeah,
I love that film. It's got a great soundtrack. It's got some great actors. Like you say, it's got the gore in it, and it also has Brian Glover and Rick Mayall in a pub.
Are you going to tell the story again about you bailing out about Brian Glover? You see, you've opened the gate. I'm just going to lead you through that little path. Go on, just tell your story. Go on.
I've been to see the Canterbury Tales, and I forget where I'd seen it. And Brian Glover was in it, and he was telling the Miller's tale where somebody ends up with a hot rod up the backside. So he was the miller in that, and he was telling his tale. And we went to a pub afterwards and had a drink, and he was in there. And I said, to be fair, I'd had a few beers. And I said, I wanted to go over to him and ask him if he remembered the Alamo, and I was talked out of it. And obviously he's passed on now, and that is my biggest regret in life, not getting on his nerves for 5 minutes.
Dude, are you ever going to tell a different story about Brian Glover? That's it?
It's about one Brian Glover story. I love Brian. He was great in Kes.
Stick to the roads.
Yeah, stick to the roads. Beware the moon. I love him. The murder it is. I love that film. I've actually got 3 copies of that film, believe it or not.
Really?
I love it that much. I've seen it in 3 different editions and thought I've got to own it.
Wow.
So we touched on it a little bit then. So how do we feel about horror remakes? Because that is one of the genre. Well, not just horror remakes, but remakes in general. Did you see the Ghostbusters remake?
Well, they're doing another one, aren't they? With
that looks quite good.
Men. Yeah, the female one was maybe it appealed to the more of a mass market, but that was dreadful. The one I watched,
awful.
Yeah, you know what?
That could have been classed as a horror film, actually. This writing's horrible.
You know what? I wasn't a massive fan of the Ghostbusters remake. Ghostbusters is one of my sort of favourite films, sort of growing up, and would get into my list, and we might talk about it a bit later in terms of sort of the comedy sort of genre sort of thing. The remake was awful. I think you're frozen there, by the way, dude, unless you're not moving.
I can still hear you.
With the Ghostbusters, though, it's not the film. It's the actors, isn't it? Like how they deliver like their characters. Like Bill Murray, it's just brilliant.
I mean, remakes. I'd be struggling to think of a remake that was better than the original.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I might be sort of shouted down from various people giving feedback from various countries and whatever. Are sequels better than the original? There's a couple of films I might mention a bit later where arguably the sequel is better than the original film. But again, there aren't many where you think, actually, you know what, part 2 or part 3 or part 4 is better than the original. But yeah, remaking. And the problem is, I suppose, when you look at Hollywood and you look at the filmmaking industry, I suppose there's a finite number of storylines, characters, plots that you can have. So they're struggling to sort of come up with original ideas. So what they think is, I know, we'll take a classic film from 40 years ago, and what we'll do is we'll put new actors in situ, in place of, actors from 40, 50 years ago, and we'll just remake the film with a slightly different twist. For me, it doesn't really work.
Sorry,
go on. I was going to say about, was it Dawn of the Dead? So obviously George Romero, which we never mentioned, has done some classic films.
Very true.
But there was the remake, was it 2006 or something like that? Was it Dawn of the Dead? Something like that. And that wasn't too bad. It wasn't as good as the earlier ones, but it wasn't bad. Like it was a good effort.
Yeah, and to be fair, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, that actually they weren't bad, to be fair, in terms of a series of films or sequel of films or such. That they were pretty good.
Well, that one's fairly unique in many ways, but actually because they did Night of the Living Dead, which is the first one, which was made in 1969, and then it actually took 2 different paths, because you had George Romero, who took it down the Dawn of the Dead theme tune, and then you had Return of the Living Dead, which as well, and Return of the Living Dead Part 2, which actually they had 2 different lines of sequels.
Yeah.
Actually, really good. I think arguably the Romero films were far superior, but a lot of the justification around remakes seems to be, well, actually the technology is so much better now that we can add the special effects, let's remake it. Doesn't work for me.
No, the problem that you've got though is the films, I mean, our age, we grew up with your non sort of CGI sort of stuff. And sorry, mine and Adam's age, maybe not yours, Andy. Yeah, okay, you're a bit younger than us. And you know what? I don't necessarily want the CGI. I don't necessarily want what I want is good characters, good storylines. That's what I want. I don't necessarily want the. I mean, I watched. Actually, possibly could have been the last film that I watched was the one with Will Smith, where he fights a younger version of himself. I can't think what the film's called.
Gemini
Man. And you know what? It's an okay film, but you could tell it was a CGI generated younger Will Smith, and it was a bit like, yeah, you know what? In patches, it was just a bit scratchy, a bit jumpy, a bit jerky, and you just thought, it's just okay. And I don't really want that. I just want, I'd have preferred him to have fought somebody other than him, a younger version of himself, another bad guy. I don't necessarily want the CGI stuff for me. I just want strong characters, strong storylines, good versus evil type thing. Crack on. So for me, remakes where you get younger versions of characters doesn't really work for me, if I'm honest.
Have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2 though? Like the way you did Kurt Russell to look younger, like that was pretty good.
I haven't. I mean, I quite like Guardians of the Galaxy, the original one. I quite like that film. That's quite a decent film. I suppose if you look at that, would you look at something like the Star Wars universe where you got Carrie Fisher, and didn't they CGI Carrie Fisher into films and stuff?
That's weird.
Sure it worked, if I'm honest, but that's just
No, I mean, for me, I thought it was done flawlessly. You could not tell the last film, it was The Rise of Skywalker. You could not tell that that wasn't Carrie Fisher acting, other than obviously the fact full well.
You know, Although the fact
But I watched that at the cinema with my brother-in-law, and he nudged me when that came on, and he said, "How would her family feel about this? Watching this film, knowing she's passed on, that must be so peculiar because it was done. I thought it was done so well."
Yeah, I just, for me though, I think the knowledge of the fact that it wasn't her, I think that. Rise of Skywalker, I've seen it. I quite liked it. It wasn't my favourite film of the sort of Star Wars universe as such, but for me, it tainted it a little bit just because I sort of knew it wasn't her. If that makes sense, do you know what I mean? Sort of CGI was potentially it just tainted it for me that I knew it wasn't her. If that makes sort of sense.
Shall we move on to the next category then?
Yeah. Because we might run out of time.
Yeah, I was about to say this could be a 3-hour special. Could be longer than Shawshank. So the next category that we had was comedy. Who wants to go first on this one?
I'll go first for this one. This is an easy choice for me. So I only watched it the other week. It's the Big Lebowski. It's a film I've watched like thousands of times, but I find the more you watch it, like you said with Shawshank, you just pick up on little nuances, like just little, just the way the character might do something in the background, like it might lean his head or something like that. It's just great. But it's a classic film. I was going to say that one of the Friday films with Ice Cube, but Big Lebowski all day for me.
The dude.
There's a couple for me. I've half mentioned it. Whether it falls into comedy is Ghostbusters, because it's not a slapstick sort of in your face. You could go Airplane for that. The Airplane series, Leslie Nielsen. You could go Airplane. I haven't got a drink problem, sort of thing. Ghostbusters for me was, and Andy mentioned it earlier, with the interplay between the characters and the way that the characters almost, you get the impression they genuinely enjoyed it, like bouncing off each other. Do you know what I mean? When you're making the film, you sort of, and then I suppose I'm a bit biased just because I love golf. Is Caddyshack, which is brilliant.
Chevy Chase, Bill Murray.
Proper slapstick. Just put it on. Don't worry about anything. Just watch it. Have a laugh. Have a beer. Like, really funny. And I say, it's golf. It's funny. It's slapstick. For me, that ticks the boxes. It's done brilliant.
Just to take you back to Ghostbusters then, because when I was writing down these films and sort of picking which ones fitted into which categories, I went onto IMDb, which obviously we're on now, which is quite exciting. Woohoo! Still only the one rating on there, which is mine, but it's 10 out of 10. I'll take it. So I looked up Ghostbusters, and it puts it under 3 genres, which is action, comedy, and fantasy. So, and that's a tough one, isn't it? There is, especially films like that, which are. I love Ghostbusters. I do think it is one of the best films made. There are a number of categories that could fit under. So Ghostbusters might feature for me a little bit later. 3 films then that I've featured. One, I put it down. It's not the best film, but Alpha Papa. I love Alan Partridge. For me, Alan Partridge is the greatest comedy creation. Is it a particularly good film? No, it's an okay one, but I love Alan Partridge. I also put down Borat because that. I love Borat because he's literally the most annoying man on the planet. And actually, we had a night out in Belgium when I had far too much to drink, didn't we, Andy? And I was Borat for the night. I was going up to strangers and irritating the hell out of them. I like you. Do you like me?
I think leading up to that, we're like, oh, where's that gone? There's just like a trail of like salad and kebab up the road. He's like, oh, there he is.
I ate all the meat, none of the salad.
Oh, that's a good shout, Borat.
Yeah.
He sort of borderlines that. I don't know. Like, is he crossing the line or not? You couldn't do that nowadays.
My favourite comedy film, Anchorman. I love Will Ferrell, and that film is literally the funniest film I've ever seen because it's just so ridiculous from start to finish, but funny, and from an era which obviously me and Gaz remember well. Andy will have seen it secondhand. He's lucky enough to have youth on his side.
Yeah, it shows. Yeah, Anchorman's really good. Yeah,
it is funny. Will Ferrell is brilliant, though, isn't he?
Yeah. His delivery and stuff, and also the team. You know how they bounce off each other.
Yeah.
Full enough, though, we said at the start, what was the last film you watched? And obviously I said It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. But last night I started watching Eurovision, which is his latest film, which is on there. I turned it off. Oh, it was bad.
To be honest, Jenny and the kids were looking at through, was it Netflix or Amazon, whatever it was, and it sort of came up, and I thought Eurotrash, was that like some sort of spin on the old like Euro trash TV sort of thing from back in the day? And I haven't seen it, and thanks to your recommendation, I now probably won't. So
don't bother.
So right, what's the next category then, kid?
Next category, dude. That's it. Keep it moving. That's what I like. Thriller. Go on, Gaz. I'll let you go first on this one.
Oh, dude, this category for me was like so difficult. I've got so many decent films.
You like your thrillers, though, don't you? Yeah,
I love my thrillers. I love my thrillers. I suppose me American thrillers. I love reading some books of FBI, CIA, sort of crime stuff. The thriller, whether would you class it as a thriller? It ranks in my top 5 favorite films of all time, which is Seven. Is it a thriller? Don't know, possibly. There's a couple of others. American History X, very, very good film. Actually, there's a bit of a link here with Edward Norton because Primal Fear is a really good film as well. I mean, I'm going to go with the fact that it's a thriller, and I'm going to say Seven. 3 of my favourite actors of all time are in it. Kevin Spacey, Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman. You put those 3 guys in a film together, I don't think you're going to go far wrong. Just the twist at the end is literally a like jaw-dropping moment when Morgan Freeman, who plays Detective Somerset, turns and he says, "John Doe has the upper hand," and you just and John Doe is Kevin Spacey's character who basically goes through, is it Detroit? I think it's set maybe, and he goes through and he basically is a serial murderer, but he murders according to the 7 deadly sins, and there's envy and there's gluttony and all that sort of stuff, and right at the end, and I'll put a spoiler out now, by the way, if anyone hasn't ever seen the film. Right at the end, Brad Pitt, who plays a character called Detective Mills, they hunt this guy down, but they don't really get any close to catching him, and he gives himself in. He gives himself up. He walks into the police station, says, "I've done it. It's me. Arrest me." And the story plays out. And to cut the film short, Kevin Spacey's character actually murders Brad Pitt's wife, and what you don't actually see, but basically beheads her and puts her head in a box, and he makes them drive him out to a desert, and he gets this delivery guy to deliver this package for Detective Mills. And obviously Brad Pitt's like, what's in the box? What's in the box? And it's Morgan Freeman's character that opens the box, and he sees the head, and he's like, excuse my French, shit. Like, what the fuck? Like, and the last deadly sin is envy. And basically the whole premise of the film is that actually the character wants Brad Pitt to shoot him. He wants to kill him because it's an act of envy. It's an act of, and it's just like, holy crap. And like, the whole film is mint, in my opinion. As I say, 3 of my favourite actors in it. And in one final horrible twist, Kevin Spacey's character basically sort of talks about the fact that Brad Pitt's wife was pregnant and was carrying his kid, and Brad Pitt's character didn't know that at the time. And the whole byplay, because Morgan Freeman, who's this older sort of detective who was about to retire, she'd confided in him previously that she was pregnant and she didn't really want to tell him. And the whole thing, that whole last sort of 10, 15 minutes is, and in the end, again, big spoiler alert, Morgan Freeman won't really tell Brad Pitt what's in the box. And in the end, Brad Pitt shoots Kevin Spacey's character, and that's like the final sort of deadly sin. And I could talk about it. It is just a mint film, like genuinely a mint film. There's a couple of gnarly bits in there. Yeah, the characters and stuff. You know, the couple of the victims are a bit gnarly, and quite a dark film. And whether it fits in the sort of thriller category, I don't know. But I've just spoken for about 10 minutes about it, and I love it. And it's a mint film. So I apologise if it's not a thriller, and people think it's not a thriller, but to me, it's class, brilliant. Three of my favourite actors. Sensational film.
Andy, if this is your favourite film now.
No, I've gone for Blade Runner.
Good.
Yeah. I watched it when I was a kid and I liked it. Well, I say a kid, I was teens and I enjoyed it. When I went on holiday last year, I got the books that do Electric Sheep Have Dreams, and I was like,
do androids dream of electric sheep?
That's the one. Yeah. it'll help if I got that right. Yeah. But obviously it's slightly different from the film. But I quite enjoy it. Even like the new one as well. The 2049 was really good. I don't know what it is. I think I just like a bit of silence in a film. And I like the is it steampunk? Not steampunk. I don't know what you call it. It's all neon lights and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that sort of theme. So yeah, I like that. That's what I'm going for.
Just for the record, I think it's Welshmen that dream of electric sheep.
Go on then, dude. What about you then for that genre?
I've chucked down three films that I thought were worth a mention. The first one is a Jim Carrey film, The Number 23, which is a very good film with literally the worst ending of any film that I have ever seen. Totally spoils the film for me, which is why I couldn't include it. But all the way through, absolutely brilliant film. Another one that I enjoy, Memento, because of the way it's told backwards in different sequences. It's Guy Pearce. He's lost his memory and he's tracing a crime back and he's making notes. But it starts off with the crime. There was a French horror film called Irreversible, actually, which did it slightly better in my opinion. Which started off with this horrific murder, horribly realistic film, and then traced it back as to why he did it. Well worth a watch. Deeply upsetting though. Just keep that in mind. But for me, my favourite one, and it's another one which is going to have a spoiler with it, Gaz, is Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Class. If you've not seen that film, and literally I saw that film in the cinema, and you hear everybody take that deep intake of breath at the denouement of the plot. Yeah. I'm not a huge Bruce Willis fan, but other than Die Hard, obviously.
Than Die Hard, yeah.
Oh yeah, but I thought that was an outstanding film, a great story told. M. Night Shyamalan, wasn't it?
Shyamalan,
yeah, who done a few, but I thought that was his best.
To be fair, you look at The Sixth Sense and you watch it and it's like, I see dead people sort of thing. You're like, oh my God, sort of thing, yeah. And you don't really realise it. And it was only until after when the plot was revealed as such. I went back and I watched it again because some people are like, you never see his shadow when he's outside in his back garden and there's the swing and stuff, and you never see his shadow. He walks past a mirror and you never see his reflection. I'm like, no, that can't be. And you remember watching it again, actually, yeah, you genuinely don't. And you think, he never actually spoke to anyone else in the film other than Bruce Willis. Mm-hmm. And you're like, really? Like, no, he must have done. And you go through the whole film thinking, really? Is he? Is he not dead? Is he dead? Do you know what I mean? And
genius.
The whole thing, it just class. Yeah.
Very.
I mean, I do want to talk about, and I mentioned Edward Norton because I struggled with a fantastic actor in my opinion, and
Definitely.
And I wrote down American History X as his best performance, and then I thought, actually, you know what, Primal Fear, which probably isn't as well known, that was a really good performance as well.
Fight Club, I thought, is pretty decent.
Yeah,
as well.
Fight Club.
Yeah, Fight Club, brilliant. I mean, American History X, it sort of strikes a chord in terms of what's going on at the moment, not necessarily Black Lives Matter as such, but just the unrest in society. And he plays a character called Derek, who is basically he's a white fascist. He's a pro-Nazi guy. And he gets sent down for a crime, and he spends 3 or 4 years in prison. And there's a bit of a gnarly scene where he puts one of his victims, he makes them sort of bite on a curb, and he stamps on the back of his head and stuff, and it's a bit gnarly. Yeah. And in the background, there's this father figure who's effectively been indoctrinating him for years to this way of thinking. And he goes into prison, and he befriends a black guy in prison, and it sort of charts their friendship. And when he comes out of prison, he's got a younger brother, and his younger brother is basically idolizes him, absolutely idolizes him. And when he comes out of prison, all these white fascist guys are flocking around him again, wanting him to be this big messiah sort of thing. And he's like, no, that's not me anymore. I've moved on from that. It's not the right way to think and all this. And his younger brother basically idolizes him and idolizes that way of life. And it's the white fascist, white power sort of movement. And it charts the way, the film charts the way that the older brother, having been in prison and been in a sort of friendship with a coloured guy who he would never associate with outside of prison at all, has sort of changed his way of thinking about humanity and stuff. And the film sort of charts how the older brother tries to sort of influence the younger brother in how he thinks. Brilliant film, absolutely. Like, if you haven't watched it, great film. Edward Norton is fantastic. I think the younger brother, is played by Edward Furlong. I think who
from famous from Terminator 2.
Was it Terminator film? I think, yeah.
Which is a sequel better than the original.
That's true, actually. That is one. Yeah,
I was sitting on it and I thought, no,
yeah,
I'm not saying
that.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And then, quickly moving on. The other one that I thought was actually Edward Norton's best performance was Primal Fear, which is a film with Richard Gere, and Edward Norton plays a choir boy, and he's a bit of split personality. And if you haven't seen it, it's a brilliant film. And again, there's a real big twist at the end. And I won't spoil it for you, no spoilers this time. But if you haven't seen it, Primal Fear, Richard Gere, Edward Norton, very, very, very good, worth a watch.
Next topic. Now here's the question: how is it pronounced? Biopic or biopic?
Biopic.
I will say biopic, but
Mark Kermode, film reviewer, says it should be pronounced biopic because it's the amalgamation of the words biographical picture. Yeah.
Biographical. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll call it biopic because I also think it's biopic.
I also think it's biopic.
Who wants to go first?
You can.
Oh. So, I picked 3 films. I couldn't the last film I watched was It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which is a partially biopic film in terms of it told the story of Mr. Rogers, which was a very famous sort of television series filmed in Pittsburgh, watched around the whole United States. Well worth a watch. Very, very good story. But the films, there's 2 films which are there or thereabouts. England Is Mine is the story of Morrissey up until the point where he formed the Smiths. Very, very good film. Very underrated film. Got absolutely slated because it doesn't feature any of his music in there. But if you watch it and if you're a huge Smiths fan, you'll see the inspiration behind a lot of songs. And actually, it's a really good story, well told. The other one, actually, is another musical one, which is Control, which is about the story of Ian Curtis, filmed largely in Macclesfield as well. So it's an area that we all know well. Great story. Very sad tale of a man who was famed for being particularly ill, had a lot of seizures, and took his life at a very young age. So it's it's a sad story that's told very, very well. But the film I picked as my favourite biopic film was 21, because it's a true story of people at, I think it's at MIT, who went and swindled a load of money out of Vegas casinos, and it is a brilliantly told story. I'm sure they've played with the story a little bit to make it a little bit more
Was that
exciting.
Kevin Spacey?
Kevin Spacey again, yeah.
I have seen that film, and there's the undercurrent of, did he take advantage of them in terms of he obviously recognised a talent or whatever it was that they had, but there is that undercurrent of, did he do it for his own personal gain or not type thing? You know what I mean? Did he take advantage of them type thing? So, but yes, I've seen that. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, really good film. Yeah.
Cool. Who wants to go next?
Well, my biopic is it a traditional biopic? It's a film called Invictus, which is charts the story of basically Nelson Mandela, and the backdrop is the 1995 Rugby World Cup in South Africa, and it basically charts the relationship. Well, it talks about Mandela in terms of his first presidential year after having been released, and he becomes president and so on. And it charts how he tries to galvanise the country around a sporting event, which is the 1995 Rugby World Cup. And obviously you've got the apartheid stuff and loads of bad stuff going on in South Africa. Matt Damon plays a character called Francois Pienaar, who was the South African rugby captain, and actually Matt Damon produces a pretty good performance as well, to be fair. Morgan Freeman plays Nelson Mandela. Bit of a theme with my films, sort of Kevin Spacey, Morgan Freeman, so and it charts the relationship between how both men, one black, one white, so Nelson Mandela, Francois Pienaar, how they both absolutely get that this is a defining moment in not only Mandela and Pienaar's history, but the history of their country. And the film is, I'm talking about now, sort of hairs on the back of my neck sort of thing. They have that one moment to galvanise the whole country. It's a World Cup. It's in their country. They're a decent side. They have a chance of winning the World Cup. No spoilers. And for me, the power, the sheer power of the story is, you've got one black, one white guy, both in positions of responsibility. Francois Pienaar being the captain of the South African rugby team, Nelson Mandela being a recently released president of South Africa. And back in 1995, I might be wrong, and don't quote me on this, and you might need to do an update if I'm wrong, but there weren't many black players in the South African rugby team at that point. Brian Habana was one, but he might have come a bit later. I don't know. But Francois Pienaar 100% got the fact that the whole nation was behind him, and he realised the gravitas of this one moment, this one tournament, this one sort of epic culmination of Pienaar's life and Mandela's life, and actually the relationship that they then had and they took forward beyond that is great. So for me, that film, whilst it touches on a bit of sort of Mandela's history just because of you have to in the film, it's the culmination of that 1995 Rugby World Cup. It was for me, it's brilliant.
Cool. Andy?
I've not watched any of them. This is one of the weirdest genres for me, because I can only remember a few. So one I watched on the plane was Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
So it's Johnny Cash. I quite enjoyed that because he's a brilliant actor. That one and Queen, the Bohemian Rhapsody film. I thought it was all right. It's worth a watch.
Not seen it, yeah, no.
Oh, dude, watch it. Brilliant. Is it Remick Malley? Is that
yeah?
So, yeah, brilliant.
It should have been Borat, but he wanted to take it that dark and more about Freddie. But yeah, it was supposed to be about the band and Freddie as well. So, but yeah, Walk the Line for me is probably a touch better, just because of Joaquin. I think.
Yeah.
Brilliant actor.
Yeah.
And if you're a Johnny Cash fan as well,
which I am. So I need to watch that one. Right, low budget then. Low budget films. I love a low budget film, but I'll let Andy go first.
So I was thinking back to Channel 4 back in the day, like midnight onwards used to have all these like low budget films, like The Evil Dead and all that stuff, and there'd be some weird like vampire films and stuff. But I went for one of my favourite genres actually is one of my favourite actors, Vin Diesel. So I went for Riddick. So the very first one.
Was that low budget? Was it?
The Pitch Black, sorry, was low budget.
Oh, Pitch Black.
Right.
It's like this. I can't remember his name. David Summit, the director. Dead low budget. Is all done in like a couple of months, and I suppose you could say it was a sort of a horror film as well. But I think he just set up the character really well. So I just went for the Pitch Black. Yeah.
Cool.
Low budget Andy sort of Evil Dead. It's just like the worst, best film ever type.
Worst? It's a great film.
So let me best worst film, if you know what I mean. That way round. It's like Bruce is just
legend.
Just brilliant, isn't he? There's not a lot you can say for a film that was meant to be low. Well, whether it was meant to be low budget, it proper was low budget.
50,000. 50,000 is what it cost to make roundabout.
Really, and it was comedic. It was low budget. It was gory. It was all the things that sort of you wanted in a. It was just if it's on late at night, you've got a beer, you're sitting on your sofa, and that comes on, you just think, you know what, it's brilliant, happy days. So for me, it would have been Evil Dead.
Yeah. Again, that one got a mention. If you watch it on YouTube, this is one of my Evil Dead. I've got another one. I've got 3 versions of. This is the Book of the Dead version. So brilliant. If you're familiar with the film, it's got brilliant. All the art. Love it. Again, cost 50,000. I think this is one of the best films ever made. So we had a few sound issues there. So we had a lovely advert from our sponsors, Lemon Co. But the other film that I wanted to mention is Clerks. It is my favourite film of all time. Cost £35,000 to make. Was self-financed by Kevin Smith. Now I work in retail, and when I'm opening up my shop in the morning, I still hear the music to that playing in my head. I think it is a fantastic film, and I think it's a great story. But there is another set of films, a trilogy of low-budget films I want to talk about. Gaz, I'm amazed you didn't bring them up.
If you're talking, whether you are talking about the original trilogy of films that I think you're thinking about,
Sabotage.
Were there 3 of them, or were there more of them?
No, there was 3.
Oh, okay.
Andy, have you ever seen Sabotage? 1, 2, or 3?
No. I was going to just quickly say then, I thought you were going to mention your world record attempt as a low-budget film.
This is better. But it stars much of the same cast. When we left school, I've got a horrible feeling we were in our early 20s. We made a series of 3 films called Sabotage 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Wow. Weren't great. They were beyond great. Gaz played a crime lord called the Shell Suit Kid, whose trademark was wearing a shell suit, which might sort of date this film a little bit. And me and my brother John played the Rudini brothers. I was Mad Dog, he was Coolio, and we basically tracked him into Church Lawton Woods and had a fight.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
That was plot line for 1, 2, and 3. I thought that would have got a mention, guys. I did.
Not for me. That if you turn around and give us the category of ultra low budget, then I might have gone there.
Is this available online?
No, 1 and 2 have gone missing. Dave Cartledge has got them somewhere, and he's not giving them up easy. I've got 3 on VHS in my garage, so if we can set that up, maybe we can convert that and we can get that online. No, maybe not.
Maybe not. No.
Well, Andy, you might get a privileged showing of one of the more questionable films ever made.
During the chili eating.
Trust me, the chili eating will be a lot more fun.
Yeah, it's not a highlight of my film resume. Let's put it like
that. No, questionable film.
Let's get this on IMDb.
Yeah. Now he's talking. So next category of films, sci-fi. Go for it, Andy.
Yeah, like I said earlier, this is like one of my favourite sort of genres. So I just went for one I've watched probably 8 billion times. It's The Matrix. Just love it. All the cast in it, the story, the fight scenes. Like, I don't know what can go wrong with it. It's a brilliant film. And there's a 4th one coming out soon as well, so it's all good.
Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah. And Keanu's going to be back in it. I think Carrie-Anne Moss as well, and maybe Morpheus. Lawrence Fishburne, I'm not sure. But yeah, there's a 4th one being filmed now. So yeah, that's my choice, Matrix.
Yeah. I had a lad who worked for me called Keanu, and everybody just called him Neo. True story.
Right, well, there you go.
Yeah. Gaz?
There's a choice. There's a series of sci-fi films that get into my top 5 all-time favourite films, which is Star Wars. The original Star Wars was, whether it will get in the sci-fi category or the classic category, I suppose. The first time I watched Star Wars, I was blown away by it. Just the whole, everything, the whole universe, the characters, the colour, the fight scenes, the sort of the transport, the space, everything was brilliant.
I think and then obviously you've got defines your childhood, doesn't it? A little bit. It defines your childhood. The Star Wars.
It does, and I suppose growing up, you were either a Star Wars fan or you were a Star Trek fan. So you're either Star Wars or Star Trek, and I was always. I've come to love Star Trek, but I was always a Star Wars fan. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi are a trilogy of films that, to me, can't really be beaten. And I know they've done the remakes and they've done episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then whatever it is, 7, 8, 9, or whatever. And I know they've done a couple of spin-off films from the Star Wars sort of universe.
Where do you stand on them then? Where do you stand on those?
Rogue One, I didn't mind. That was a decent standalone film. Rise of Skywalker, I thought was a decent film. It wasn't my favourite film. I thought it was decent. Thought it was okay. Phantom Menace, I thought was awful. It's a horrible film. And then I can't remember what the film was called. Was it with Jar Jar Binks and stuff in it? I don't know what that one was. That was basically just to placate the kids. That was just a kiddie character. Like, I don't get it, but
there are some theories that actually Jar Jar Binks was a Darth, like a Sith Lord, as well.
Really?
He's just pretending to be like an idiot.
An idiot, right? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it worked.
I mean, in a way, sort of kids of today, they've probably been tainted a little bit because you've got all of the Star Wars films, but obviously mine and Adam's generation, Andy, yours, slightly different than ours, obviously. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, class. Couldn't fault them. Having said that, the film that I put into my sci-fi category, because my Star Wars films went into my top 5. The one that went into my sci-fi category was Alien, which is a class film and probably one of the first films that I sort of watched where there was actually a very, very strong female lead character. So obviously Ripley was a female character, and I suppose the films that you'd watch growing up, it was always men. men were the strong, and men were the, they were the heroes. And actually, Alien, it was a female character. Obviously, Sigourney Weaver played Ripley and stuff, and it was, and the whole, oh my God, what's going on type feel of the film, and trying to figure out exactly why things were happening was, to me, was it's a bit darker, obviously, than the Star Wars films. Although Empire Strikes Back is quite dark, to be fair. But so I put Alien into my sci-fi category, and actually my Star Wars goes into my top 5 category sort of thing. So for me, take your pick. Star Wars I would lean to, but Alien is still decent.
Cool. Obviously for me, it's Star Wars all day, every day. I'm not going to debate that one. You mentioned it there. I think you sold it well enough. Where do you stand? Where do you go, Andy? Are you a fan of Star Wars?
Yeah, Jar Jar Binks is brilliant.
How do we get him off the call?
I was just thinking that when you're talking about, obviously you got the originals and then prequels and stuff like that. And so like the Star Wars universe as a whole was really good. I mean, I wasn't around early enough to see the original films come out and what sort of following they got and stuff. But I think, was it 1, 2, and 3 as they dubbed it, 97 onwards, I think it was. So I like them because I like Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor were pretty good in them. But then Aliens have done a similar trick, haven't they, where they've done prequels with Alien Covenant and Prometheus. It's quite interesting. But I do love Star Wars, and obviously being a gamer as well, they've done a few like
we talked about this
Star
last week a little
Wars
bit, didn't we?
Yeah. So there's a few stories in there where they could make them into a film, and they're pretty good. There's like one game, for example, you play as a character. It's called The Old Republic. You play as a guy who you just wake up on a ship and you're like, oh, I don't know who you are or anything like that. And as the game goes on, you're a Sith Lord and stuff like that. That's pretty good. So the Star Wars universe is really good. It's quite well thought of, I thought. You don't really pick loads of plot holes in it, do you? Whereas there are some series you can think of, oh, why didn't you do this? Why do you do that? But no, Star Wars is brilliant.
There are a couple, but I don't want to get started because it could go on for a long while. But funnily enough, actually, Empire Strikes Back was the first film I ever saw at the cinema, going back to the late 70s. Was it early 80s, that one? No, 70s, wasn't it? Never mind.
Whether you watched it in the late 70s or not, or early 80s, I don't know.
The other one that I thought was worth a mention, which is made more recently, was Ex Machina. Have you seen that one? Which plays with AI and like alternative intelligence and what have you. Very, very good film. Very well made as well. I actually watched that on a plane, and there's a lot of female nudity in it. I was looking over my shoulder thinking, oh.
Very nice.
Yeah. Who's the guy with a porno on? Watch that one, guys, actually, because that is a really, really good sci-fi film. Very, very well made, very intelligently made as well. Really interesting film. Right, I can't imagine this one's going to take up a lot of our time now. Animation.
Dude, seriously?
Oh, well, yeah. Go on.
I mean, obviously, I've got sort of 2 daughters, and they love the sort of Disney sort of stuff. But for me, dude, Toy Story is mint. Like for years, and this might be a little bit of a frank admission, I sort of wanted to be Buzz Lightyear. Buzz Lightyear is mint. He is.
You wanted to be 6 inches tall.
Just wanted to be 6 inches.
Buzz Lightyear is honestly, and obviously you've got Tom Hanks as the voice and stuff of Woody, and so you've got a decent name there, but and again they've done sort of Toy Story 2 and 3 and so on. 4 now I think is it, but the original Toy Story is mint.
Yeah, I love 4. Brilliant.
Wait, was 4 the one with the big teddy bear? Or was that 3?
3.
That was 3.
4 came out last year, and Keanu's in that as well. And it's really good.
Who does he play in it?
The motorbike guy. The stuntman. I can't remember his name.
Oh yeah. Basically,
Yeah.
Evil Knievel, but I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But so for me, yeah, animation film, Toy Story, all day long, just because I love Buzz Lightyear. He's mint.
Andy?
When I was making this list, I was thinking, obviously, in gaming, there's a few Final Fantasy films which are based on games and stuff. But then I just threw down How to Train Your Dragon. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, just because I think it's because the dragon reminds me of my dog, like the way it acts and stuff. I just went for that. Yeah, it's a bit of a Toy Story though. It's probably better.
I'll take that as well.
But How to Train Your Dragon, I just like it.
Was it Toothless? Is that the name of the dragon? Was it Toothless? That was the name of the dragon. Is it?
I've not seen that.
Oh, there's like 2 or 3 of them now, I think.
There are. Yeah. There's definitely a 2. There might be a 3. But to be fair, it's sort of, is it Norse or whatever sort of mythology and stuff? So Andy being a Viking obviously fits right in with that, doesn't he? So it's
purely coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, have you guys seen Inside Out?
Yes.
So it's another Disney Pixar one. I think that one is excellent. I love the Toy Story films, but I think this one is a little bit better. It made me understand a little bit more about my emotions, as well as it's helping the kids understand their emotions. But we're all big kids, aren't we? Christ, we're talking about children's films here, aren't we? Animations.
I can't think of what film this is. Inside Out.
Inside Out. It's basically there's your 4 different emotions operating inside your head, how they behave. Honestly, well worth a watch. It's on. If you've got Disney Plus, it's on there right now. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But no, Toy Story. I can't fault you there, dude.
Yeah.
I can't fault you on that one. Right then, let's move on to action. Who wants to start?
Again, there's a couple. I might be doing a disservice to lots and lots of people, but Die Hard is Is
it a Christmas film?
No, it isn't. Loads of people think it is, but it isn't. It was no. If you do the research online, it says no, it's not a Christmas film.
It's set at Christmas.
But
and they show it at Christmas.
And they showed at Christmas.
Every Christmas.
And the snow. So, you know what I mean? But for me, I mean, there are a couple. So you could go Terminator. If it's a sort of action film, it might be sci-fi or whatever. And lots of these films we're going to talk about they're multiple genres, aren't they? So, Die Hard is class to me. And my wife Jenny hates Bruce Willis as an actor, and I don't think he's the best actor in the world. But that film is mint, and when you've got Hans there, and he's just like, and he goes through, and he's sort of through, and it is brilliant. So for me, Die Hard, class.
Andy,
so this one was quite easy for me. So there's sort of 3 films where I actually felt like a little tear came into my eye, like at the endings of them. So there's obviously. I'll go on.
I was gonna say, don't watch Up then. I cried like a baby through that.
I've seen that. That was a good animated film as well. But I was Gladiator is one of my all-time favorite films, and there's Troy as well. But I went for a film called Fearless, which is a Jet Li film, and it's like a turn of the century film where Japan was occupying China, and he plays a guy called Huan Yinjia who tries to unite the country, and he's a martial artist basically, and he sort of, like he's all about, when he's younger and all that, he's all about beating everyone up and stuff. Then as he gets older, he's like, actually, it's not just about me, it's about my country, and he just unites the country in this film, and it's just brilliant. Like, I'm not going to spoil any of it. I think you should just watch it, but.
I've not heard of that one. What's it called again? Sorry.
Fearless.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give that a go. Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Blu-ray. It's on Blu-ray and everything. It's just brilliant. It's basically a martial arts film, but there's like obviously a really good plot to it as well. They're the 3 films that are a little I had to wipe my eye a little bit like that.
Gladiator's a shout though, because that's a class film.
Yeah.
Films I put down then. I'm not going to talk too much about Ghostbusters because we've covered that, but I've stuck it under action. It's loosely based. Yes, better argument for comedy and fantasy, but I love that film. I do believe that is one of the best films ever made. Cinematically, it's near perfect, and the 4 main characters, brilliant.
I'd say 5. You got to include the Marshmallow Man.
Yeah, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Yeah,
Well, it's funny because when I was looking at Ghostbusters, there's the scene where they're on the top of the building, and he says like, just empty your mind, try not to think about anything, because whatever you're going to think about is like what is going to be your destiny or whatever it says. And next minute, this like Stay Puft Man sort of comes like bounding down, and does he says something like, I tried to think of the most harmless thing I could, or whatever. It's just a 40-foot Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Just brilliant. Just genius.
The other films then that I have mentioned, and actually chucked it into the category of what we talked about earlier, is where the sequels are better, and you can agree or disagree with me on this one. Young Guns and Young Guns 2.
Oh, yes.
Great films.
Young Guns 2 is better than Young Guns?
It's up there. I think it's as good as.
The first one sets the premise, but the second one is...
Okay.
The guy who plays Pat Garrett in the second one, much better. The one in the original one, it's actually John Wayne's son, lousy actor. His dad was a little bit better. The second one, it was the guy who played Gil Grissom in CSI. Much better actor. But it's a really interesting story. The second one, told from the point of brushy Billy Roberts and whether he is or whether he isn't Billy the Kid. But I think that is a fantastic story. Yeah. And then I can't believe that nobody else has mentioned this under action. Rocky and the Rocky film and the sequels that followed. Have you got it elsewhere? I hope you've got it elsewhere.
I have it. You mentioned it earlier. I'll leave it just and I'll mention it at the end if we haven't mentioned it. But it was on my notable others to mention because it probably is a film that could hit a couple of different genre or something. But Rocky was mint, although I actually think there's a couple of the sequels that are better than the original. Rocky 2 is better, and personally, I think Rocky 4 is outstanding.
Why have you skipped over Rocky 3? Got Mr. T in it, got Hulk Hogan in it, Thunder Lips.
Yeah, because it's great. Rocky 4 is great, Rocky 3 is pants.
I wasn't blown away by the Rocky films. I think because Clint Eastwood had already done the fighting thing and he's losing, then all of a sudden he just you must have started
with Rocky 5, which is without worse.
Tommy Morrison in it.
Yeah, Tommy the Machine Gun. Come on.
No, I was more of a Schwarzenegger guy growing up, so Stallone was like.
Look, everybody loves Arnold, but those films, phenomenal. Have you seen Rocky Balboa?
I've seen Stop or Mum Will Shoot.
Rocky is mint. So the first film is brilliant.
What about Creed and Creed 2? Have you seen those?
Good. Yes.
Great. Creed 2, bit cheesy, but Creed is brilliant.
Creed, is that the one that's got Tony Bellew in it? Big Everton fan.
Yeah. That filmed at Goodison Park as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, happy days. Yeah. But Rocky is phenomenal. Rocky 2, very good. Rocky 3, terrible.
Which is that the one with Ivan Drago?
No, that's 4. That's mid.
I love that one.
That's a very, very good film. 5
good. 3 is good.
Dude,
Club Lang, Mr. T.
No, didn't rate it.
What do you predict? Pain.
Is it Thunder Lips or whatever? Was it? But it was that Hulk Hogan. Whatever it was.
Any film that features Hulk Hogan, I'm on board.
So Sylvester Stallone, Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, sold, done.
Done. Perfect. That is for me. Well, just going back to Rocky Balboa, I noted this down because there's a great quote in Rocky Balboa where it's life's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, which I think is a fantastic quote in a film. But go on, I'm going to catch you both on there. What's your favourite quote from a film then? Because that's probably mine.
Well, you know what? I've mentioned one already, and I've probably got 3 others if you bear with me. So the first one is from a film we haven't mentioned yet, which is a film called Usual Suspects, which actually gets into my top 5 all-time favourite films, ranked number 5, and it's the greatest trick the devil ever pulled. It's convincing the world he didn't exist. Brilliant film, brilliant quote. Again, Kevin Spacey plays Virgil, and he's basically his alter ego is Kaiser Soze, and it's a fantastic film. But yeah, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. That was number 1. Another quote from Usual Suspects is "Hand me the key, you fucking cocksucker," which is a brilliant line. And in the film that they basically get these 5 guys to do a police lineup, and they try to get somebody an eyewitness to, and if you believe the story, each of the characters has to say this line: "Hand me the key, you fucking cocksucker." And Benicio del Toro, who plays Fenster, one of the characters in the film, they basically, when he walks forward, they absolutely stop pissing themselves laughing. The rest of them, all of them, and it's one of the very, very famous bloopers. In as much that apparently Benicio del Toro was just farting like a pig. As he was delivering the line, he literally was fine. So these other guys are just crying. You've got Gabriel Byrne, you've got Stephen Baldwin, you've got Kevin Spacey, and these guys in this lineup, they're literally like pissing themselves laughing. And they actually kept it in the film. So if you watch the film, you can see them all literally like crying, laughing. And it's because Benicio del Toro, and he should say, "Hand me the keys, you fucking cocksucker." But actually, as he's delivering it, he's just farting his pants off. And literally, these other guys are just pissing themselves laughing. So that's brilliant. And then the other one is Luke, I am your father, sort of thing. That's just as a one line, that's mint. So they're decent quotes for me.
Andy?
You've caught me off guard, but a few easy ones. Probably the Gladiator bit where he's like takes off his helmet at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And Maximus Decimus Aurelius, whatever. There's one from a Friday film as well where they just go "Bye, Felicia," and it don't mean anything about context.
"Bye, Felicia."
Yeah, and I use that at work all the time. But there's that one. Yeah, I did think of another one. I was literally just forgot it though. But I was going to do a Borat one as well. But no, "Bye, Felicia" is probably one of my favourite ones. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you?
I give you the Rocky one there at the start.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right then, fantasy films. Not pornography, Gary. Fantasy films.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Lord of the Rings, simple as, full stop, bish, bash, bosh, done. I'm a bit of a geek. Tolkien, to me, is a genius. An absolute literary genius. Not only did he wrote the stories, he developed the characters, which obviously, a lot of authors do. But it's the whole genre. To me, he's the grandfather, the daddy of that mythological elf, dwarf, dragon type genre. Not only did he develop that, he developed the language, and literally there is an elfish language, there's a dwarvish language, there's a language of the different races of men, but also the genealogy. You think how I suppose, in depth, clever. How creative must he have been? He developed a genealogy of each of not only these different characters, but these different races of people. So for me, he stands on a pedestal that can't be matched by any other literary person. Tolkien is a genius in my eyes.
Did he write that during World War One or just after? Where it's like bits of it are pulled from the war and stuff like that.
I think it was World War II, actually. It was around about
Two.
I think he might have wrote The Hobbit before the Second World War, but I'm sure Lord of the Rings was around about
The Hobbit
47.
The Hobbit was written effectively as a standalone children's story originally. It literally was a children's story. And then obviously, if you watch the film Tolkien, it talks about the sort of the development of his writing career and so on when he was down in Oxford and stuff. And I have had a pint in the Eagle and Child in Oxford, which is mint. So, to me, that whole genre, I'm a massive geek. I love Tolkien. When I argue with my kids about Harry Potter, and Amy will say her favourite film is Harry Potter, I will say that J.K. Rowling ripped off so much from Tolkien. It is just, in my opinion, ridiculous. Fair play to it. She's made a living out of it, whatever, but she just basically ripped off Tolkien.
So where do you stand then? Obviously, Peter Jackson did a fantastic job with the making of the three, faultless job. But where do you stand with the making of the films, like the three Hobbit films? Then,
you know what, the Lord of the Rings films were phenomenal, and I could have gone for the Aragorn quote of "There may come a day when the courage of men fail" and all of that, which is a phenomenal hairs on the back of your neck quote. The Hobbit films, it was just okay for me. The three Lord of the Rings films, I can't fault them. I thought they were cast perfectly. I thought the main characters, I thought the development, the way they portrayed the characters was brilliant. The Hobbit, and this is nothing against Martin Freeman. Was it Martin Freeman?
It was.
Just okay for me. Didn't quite match the Lord of the Rings, but just okay.
Andy?
I went down a weird path for this one. So I quite like Bram Stoker's Dracula and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I went for Dracula Untold, which was Luke Evans playing like the biopic of Dracula, like how he became Count Dracula. It's a fairly recent film, but it's quite a decent effort, I thought.
So does that sort of feature him as Vlad the Impaler?
Yes. So he's just a normal king at first, but then I think his empire is like going to be under attack by a greater force. So he does a deal with a guy in a cave and becomes Dracula. And it's just, I think it's quite well done for like a newer film. I really like Bram Stoker's Dracula with Edward Norton in that and Winona Ryder. But Dracula Untold, I thought it was worth a mention. It's quite a decent effort. I was just thinking then when you're saying about the Hobbit and all that, was the Lord of the Rings? I've not watched the Hobbit films, but the Lord of the Rings I really liked. Do you think the Hobbit wasn't as good because its territory had already been done? So like Lord of the Rings came out and there wasn't really stuff before that, was there? It's all like this, like 3-hour-long films and stuff like that. And
possibly. I mean, for me, like the Lord of the Ring films, you got three-hour films, and you got the three books which made up Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit is actually it's not short, but as a children's story, I didn't see the need to make 3 films out of it. I thought they went a little bit too in depth. As a standalone film would have been nice, but obviously, there was called to make 3 out of it. I just didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah. And I think that's where I came from, being a bit of a diehard Tolkien fan as such. I just didn't think they did The Hobbit the way they did The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings films, each of them were phenomenal and actually follow each of the three books brilliantly. To me, maybe you could have got away with 2 films. I think if you'd have made one Hobbit film, you might have condensed it possibly a bit too much. Maybe you could have done an extended film, maybe, but 2, I think, would have been right. 3, it just didn't work for me. It was just okay, and that's coming from a massive Tolkien fan.
The 2 I picked, I've noted those down as well, but there's 2 other films that I wanted to mention that I absolutely love. The first one, I don't know if you've seen it, Big Fish, Ewan McGregor and Albert Finney.
Yeah, seen it.
I love that film. It's a great story. It's basically a guy on his deathbed and he's telling the story of his life, and everybody just presumes he's a bullshitter. And then at his funeral, obviously these characters all sort of turn up, and it's a great story. And the bit that captivated me is the part where they go and they look into the witch's eye, and Albert Finney tells a story where his friends were too afraid to look into the witch's eye, which told the story of how they would die. And Albert Finney looks into the witch's eye as a child, or Ewan McGregor looks when he was younger, looks into the witch's eye because he thought, well, everything else I'm going to face in my life, I know is not going to kill me up until this point. Yeah. Whereas everybody else saw the fear part of it. And I just love the thought process behind that. The other one actually is one that you and I, Gaz, actually saw at the cinema many, many, many years ago, The Fisher King.
Oh, class,
I absolutely love that story.
You know what? When you started talking then, about there's a couple of films, it came to me then. I thought, oh, actually, I wonder whether he's going to mention. Was it Jeff Bridges and was it
Robin Williams? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Robin Williams fan, but for me, he is phenomenal. Have you seen that one, Andy?
No.
The first one. Honestly, watch it. It is one of the best films I've ever seen. Basically, Jeff Bridges plays a larger-than-life radio DJ personality, and he's a shock jock, and he says things, and he's got this caller that he takes the piss out of, and this caller ends up going into a bar and just shooting everybody up with a 12 gauge. And one of the people he kills is the wife of Robin Williams, who has a mental breakdown and becomes homeless and lives in this fantasy life. And it is one of the, and it's I'm a massive Monty Python fan, and it's a Terry Gilliam directed film. Phenomenal, honestly.
Great. Yeah.
One of the best. That's up there in my top 5. I absolutely adore that film. Yeah. Just so strange, but so fantastic. You can believe in those characters and buy into it. Jeff Bridges for me is one of the best actors. He's convincing in everything that he does. I absolutely love that guy. Right then, we're getting close to the end now. We're actually, there's games of football that are shorter than this. Classic films. Then I've noted down the classics, which encapsulates a whole load of things. Do you want to go first, Andy?
I just went for Outlaw Josie Wales, being a Clint Eastwood fan. He's done loads of notable stuff, but just Outlaw Josie Wales is always it always comes to my mind when I think of classic films. Yeah, short and sweet.
Short and sweet, yeah. Unlike this podcast. Andy, Gaz, sorry.
Godfather.
Pardon?
Godfather. Just Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Marlon Brando, Al Pacino. Can't get better than that. And again, arguably, and I'm not sure I subscribe to this, but arguably Godfather 2 better than the original. There's a thought between, Marlon Brando, Don Vito Corleone delivers a masterpiece of a performance. Al Pacino as his lad is frightening in his ambition to lead the family, and obviously Godfather 2 takes over the story of Al Pacino as his son. Brilliant, just brilliant. Can't say more than that. If you haven't seen them, go and watch 1, go and watch 2. Phenomenal films.
And then watch Scarface as well, because that's a good film.
honestly, dude, you could go through classic films. You could go through a number with Pacino, De Niro. You know, I mean, I've got Ronin down there. Classic, brilliant film. Leon. I got down with Jean Reno. Class. Just was it Natalie Portman? Was it a young Natalie Portman?
Yeah, very young in that, isn't she? Yeah.
Brilliant film. You know, there's a number of classic films. I mean, it's a relatively recent film to put into the classic genre, but Forrest Gump, Saving Private Ryan, you know, just the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, I'm sorry, you won't get a more harrowing film than that.
Very, very
first
harrowing.
20 minutes is just like unbelievable. But the one that I wrote down on my list for classic was Godfather. Brilliant.
I've got two, and they are absolute classics. The first I'm going to start with is one of my top five, Citizen Kane. Orson Welles, absolutely brilliant film. When I was first chatting the wife up, as she is now, Kim, I said literally that there's a scene in this film, using the old smoothness, that really reminds me of you. And there's a bit where one of Orson Welles, Citizen Kane's character, he's describing a memory he has of a woman who he never met, who just got off a boat. And there's not a day in his life where he doesn't think about the woman. And the way he retells that story, I find very compelling and very convincing. So I lent it to, way up. Oh. The guard dogs are out. So I lent Kim this film to watch. And she gave it me back. Says, I can't remember any boats in it. Said, you invested your time in that one well.
Brilliant.
But no, I love Citizen Kane. Great story. Very bizarre. Very peculiar. Hello.
He's back again.
It's back, yeah. The other one, and It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah. Brilliant, mate.
That is another film. If you can sit through that and not cry, you're a serial killer, probably. The bit at the end where everybody ponies up and hands out the cash to him, like to save the day. I just think that is a fantastic, bit cheesy how it starts with the bell ringing and what have you, but I do love that film. But just to chuck this in, and we'll keep this a little bit brief, bearing in mind that it's July tomorrow as we're recording this. We're going to release this podcast in July, but best Christmas film.
Die Hard. No,
you just said.
Jingle All the Way. I don't know.
Oh, it's up there. No, Elf is for me.
Elf for me, yeah.
Muppets Christmas Carol.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Just while we're back on the classics, whether it's a classic film or it's just a classic quote, you've got Charlie Chaplin in The Great Dictator, which is, if you haven't seen the quote, the film is a very strange sort of utopian world, but the quote from Charlie Chaplin, and if you sort of Google it, it strikes a chord, and it's quite a lengthy quote, and it strikes a chord in terms of just the way it makes you think about where we're going and how we're influenced and what things influence us. And it's a phenomenal quote. Good film, I would say classic quote as opposed to classic film, but it still gets into classic genre. So that was the one I just possibly had to just throw in there. It's brilliant.
Final category then, and we talked about this before we went
Soundtracks.
live. No. We'll come to that. We'll come to that with short films. We'll get into soundtracks before we finish.
I'll make it short and sweet. I'm not a massive fan of short films, so I probably couldn't comment on any or many that I've seen. It's not a genre that I sort of interests me, so I'll sort of pass the book back to either Andy or Ad and sort of say, not for me.
Andy?
I've got one down for this. And again, it's not some. I couldn't really think of many, but I went for the Animatrix, which is like 7. I think it's about 7 short films based around the Matrix universe. They're all different little stories, and it's all done by different directors. So you'll get like an animated one, and then a cartoon one, and a black and white one, and yeah, they're all short films, all like 10, 15 minutes or so. But that's the other thing I think of. It's not. I can't think of any short films. Unless you got adverts.
Hey, you've not seen Sabotage 1, 2, and 3. They were mercilessly short.
Thankfully short.
Like your film careers.
There's still time. I've not noted down much, but one of my favourite short films is a film called My Wrongs, numbers 8245 to 8249 and 117, which I've picked up here. It's 10 minutes long. It's a film about mental health. It is actually fairly entertaining, and it does make you laugh. It's about a guy who's looking after a dog, and ultimately, he believes that this dog is going to defend his every action that he's ever conducted in life in court, and then he does some things wrong, which ultimately ends in the dog being deceased. But a very, very entertaining film. I think he actually won an Oscar or something, and every wrong that he's ever committed apparently is in here, but you have to destroy the case to break them down, which I'm not willing to. So I'm not willing to do. But a very, very entertaining film.
It's not another Kevin Spacey film.
It's not. No. I tell you what, he's got a lot of mentions without a certain without a certain something being mentioned tonight. He's a very fortunate boy. But just to chuck in, I want to mention a couple of films here at this point, because a couple of my pals, Tiddy and Shannon, this is something that they put out, and they put out a new film yesterday, in fact, but this is, Monday night it was put out. This podcast goes out Friday. Film called The Odds. You can find it at Outcasts Media Group on YouTube. 5 minutes long. Give it a watch, because it is a very, very good film talking about how you should ignore the odds and go for your goals in life. They also entered a competition, which is a stay-at-home film festival. Made the last 25. Called The Change, which is just about people's mindset during the pandemic. Well worth a watch. And they do put out some other good films as well. 420 Eats is a great TV series. Just give it a go. Search it out on YouTube, because I think they're fantastic. Whether they'll have stuck around, I know they listen to this podcast, given it the full nearly 2 hours that we're going to drag this out for, but well worth a watch.
Nice plug if they make it to the end as well.
Yeah. It's like the Easter egg. Yeah. So, Gaz, there, you alluded to something. Soundtracks, movie soundtracks. We talk about music being the soundtrack to our life. So some of these films can hit home to us. What's some of your favourite soundtracks to films then?
I mean, you look at something like Gladiator, Star Wars, the John Williams type big orchestra, massive. I mean, some of those soundtracks are phenomenal, and you can listen to them, and you can imagine going to the Royal Albert Hall in its day, and pomp and circumstance and all that, and you've got the sort of the orchestra playing, and that would be phenomenal, be brilliant. But two for me. Rocky IV is just an outstanding soundtrack. And the other one, and it's a film that we haven't mentioned at all in any category, I don't think, but the soundtrack again is phenomenal. It's Top Gun. And if you don't like the film, just listen to the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is amazing. It is genius, absolutely genius. So for me, Top Gun, Rocky IV, brilliant soundtracks.
I don't like Top Gun.
It's awful.
What can you not? What is there to not like? It's
the film.
It's the main character in a fighter jet shooting Russians and Japanese and whoever else there is to a mint soundtrack. It's ace.
A little short guy going around picking fights with foreigners. I'm not sure that's something we should be promoting.
brilliant. But yeah, I mean, look, you can go down. As I said, you can go down if you actually listen to the soundtrack of Lord of the Rings, which is one of my favorite films. It's phenomenal, and it was a little bit tongue in cheek in terms of the Top Gun and Rocky stuff, but there's the songs on there, and if Sid was on, he would 100% say Rocky 4 without doubt.
And if our old pal Phil was on, he'd be talking about RoboCop. Do you remember that? We had a pal called Phil, and he literally bought the sound. Literally, honestly, guys, this is the best soundtrack you'll ever hear. All right, this is the bit where they're in the warehouse. Dun 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 dun. And this is the bit where they're fighting him on the stairs. Dun dun dun. It's film. It's the same music all over. Let it go. Okay, it's an okay film, but just drop it.
It literally was. It was like, this is so good. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. Dude, we've just listened to that 10 minutes ago. It's the same thing.
The same, all the way through. Andy, so
obviously this was an atomic we pre-prepared for, but there's a few. One of them's Blade, and The Matrix. Actually, got some good bangers on there, like Rage Against the Machine and stuff. But Young Guns was a really good one.
Oh yeah, Young Guns 2, like Blaze of Glory.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've got that on my phone. But yeah, there was another one. I forgot what it wasn't it?
To be fair, Blade is actually, it's a pretty decent film, really. But Wesley Snipes is decent. And
it's another film they're remaking as well.
Really?
With another guy in there.
No need to remake it.
You see,
it was because it's Marvel, isn't it? So it's Marvel or DC. Yeah. Marvel, I think. And it's one of the first superhero. Well, not the first, but one of.
Probably was, wasn't it? Yeah, the more recent one.
Yeah. But yeah, that soundtrack was really good. So I can't describe it, like techno sort of dance or something like that, in it.
The tune when he goes into the nightclub in one of the first scenes, and they're all obviously all and then all of a sudden sprinklers come on, it's just the blood, and it's just like, oh my god, what's going on here, sort of thing. Brilliant scene.
Easy Rider as well had some good 60s 70s rock as well. Nice easy one.
For me, I love Clerks, and I love Clerks 2, and Clerks 2 for me is one of the best soundtracks. When they open that up and Dante's driving to work and it's got Nothing But Flowers playing by Talking Heads, I just think that is the perfect start musically to any film ever made. I love that. And that is a real eclectic mix as well throughout the whole film. Well worth a watch. So we've talked about a fair few films there, and actually, funnily enough, there's very few films that all three of us have actually mentioned. Do you know what I mean? Well, we've actually said, like me and you mentioned Ghostbusters, Gaz. But other than that, I don't, and we haven't planned this, but I think we've all talked about a pretty separate bunch of films.
Yeah,
so,
I think so.
Just to close out then, tell us about a few films that we're looking forward to then, that are coming up, whether it's ones that are out now we haven't quite got around to watching, or that are due out in the cinema once things get back to normal.
Bill and Ted.
Yes. Bill and Ted Face the Music. Cannot wait.
Yes. Yeah. As long as they have the telephone booth in there, obviously that's a given. That has to be in there. Keanu Reeves, was it Alex Winter? Alec Winter, yeah. He's been there. Can you dredge up a couple of the old characters from that? I'm not so sure. Don't know.
Rufus, maybe.
You know what?
I think he's dead.
Is he?
Carling?
Oh yeah.
Only because you guys hate it, and I mentioned it in my soundtrack. Obviously, there's a new Top Gun film coming out, so I'll wait to see what that's like. I'm not.
It's going to be like a Ghostbusters remake.
Can't be that bad, dude. Seriously, can't be that bad. I mean, there's a couple of films. Sorry, there's a couple of things that I'd like to see made, but perhaps aren't.
That's my next question. So just what you're looking forward to.
I mean, there's a couple of novels that I've read that, again, there's whispers that they might be making to films, and again, like them all, Tom Cruise has played one of them, but the Jack Reacher series of films which is based on the Lee Child books. And when you read the books, he's 6'4", 6'5", rugged.
Like The Rock.
And literally, if you picture Liam Neeson, he would have been perfect for that character. And actually, they typecast Tom Cruise, who's like
he
5'4".
Produced it, didn't he?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you got Lee Child and he came on and he was talking about why, because obviously there was loads of critics and stuff saying, why did you cast him as that? And Lee Child basically came on and tried to defend why you cast him. And everyone was just like, no, I'm not having that, mate. It should have been someone like a Gerard Butler or a Liam Neeson or someone a bit more rugged, a bit more bulky. So I'm looking forward to maybe a couple of Reacher films, but without Tom Cruise.
He's a really good actor. He does the part well, but like I say, his physical stature. Rock would have been really good.
When you read the books, it just isn't him. And when you talk about being not typecast, and casting that, go back to the Lord of the Rings films, I can't ever imagine any of the Lord of the Rings films not having those characters in there. The only one possibly was Boromir that was typecast as Sean Bean. I possibly would have changed him, but other than that, there aren't any. Aragorn is Viggo Mortensen. That's who he is. That's that character. So I hope they cast a non-Tom Cruise into that role. I'd quite like to see where the Marvel universe goes. I sort of wonder where that, because obviously it's a massive industry and Iron Man is sort of dead and sort of Spider-Man is sort of coming in to it a little bit.
I was going to mention that with is it Steve Fargy? I can't remember his name. Fargy. He's overseeing like the whole arc of it, and he was saying you got the next phase, which is phase 4 or 5. So they're bringing all new characters in, aren't they? Because all the Avengers people are left or dead or whatever. And then there's another 2 phases which they've already planned for. So like I say, it's going to be really good.
I'd be quite cool, quite interested to see where that goes. And then for me, the only other one would be the Star Wars universe. Is that going to die a death, or are they going to keep doing the sort of standalone sort of stories?
What did you make of the Han Solo one? Sorry.
The Solo one was okay, actually. Solo.
I love that.
I quite enjoyed that film. I did quite enjoy that. I tell you, the one I am looking forward to in a way, because I got hooked onto the series, is what are they going to do with Rick Grimes of The Walking Dead? So what are his standalone films going to be like? I'm assuming it's going to be Andrew Lincoln again, but I don't know.
I believe so. I will watch those. I actually stopped watching The Walking Dead after they killed Carl. I was happy with that. I hated that guy.
I hate Carl. I was glad he went. I have dipped in recently, and I quite enjoyed it when Alpha bit the dust and stuff. But I am losing a bit of patience with it. But I would be interested to see how they develop the Rick Grimes storyline. Obviously, he was thought to be dead, but he's been taken on in a helicopter and he's gone elsewhere. So that's what I would potentially be looking forward to seeing. What about yourself, Ad? Anything you're looking forward to?
Well, obviously, Bill and Ted Face the Music, big one. I love those films back in the day. Saw them both at the cinema when they first came out. The other ones for me, Mallrats 2, and another Kevin Smith film. I love Kevin Smith's film. I love the Askew universe. And then Clerks 3, like I said, I love Clerks 2, Clerks 3. That's the one I'm really, really looking for. Dante and Randall, and just seeing what they do next. So finally, I stopped you in your tracks there, Gaz. What's the one film that you'd like to see made that's not been made yet?
Oh, dude. That's a one film.
I'm looking for something, an answer other than Sabotage 4.
Yeah, well, to be fair, that's not going to ever be made. I'm trying to think if there's a film that I could follow up to one of my favourite films. I'm thinking Shawshank 7, Usual Suspects. I don't think you could do a follow up to Shawshank. I think that 7. I don't know. Maybe you could think, where does Brad Pitt's character go? I don't think there's a film that I'm sitting here thinking, I think, God, I wish they'd make that. I think I would be interested, as I said, I'd be interested to see if the Lee Child books, in terms of the Jack Reacher books, are a phenomenal series of books, and they're multi-best-selling, and I quite like that genre. I'd be interested to see if they do make another film, who they cast as Jack Reacher. I'm hoping it isn't Tom Cruise.
Hulk Hogan? Is Hulk Hogan in for that role?
You see, I don't think he'd do it for me either. No, to be fair, Andy would be a better Jack Reacher than Hulk Hogan. Andy fits the bill better than Hulk Hogan.
I'll do it for 50 mil.
So no, I don't think there's nothing in terms of, I've heard a whisper about it's going to be made, and oh my God, I think they should. So no, I'm just curious to see where they would go with a couple of the universes, like I said, the Star Wars universe, maybe the Lord of the Rings universe, the Marvel stuff. Just generally, just see where they go from there.
I imagine with Marvel, it'd be a lot of remakes. They seem to remake an awful lot of those movies.
Well, was it the Punisher? Was it Punisher or something that they just made a relatively new remake of stuff? Look, can you get new Marvel characters? Not sure. Can you make films of Marvel characters that haven't been made before? Yeah, you could do a film about the Beast, or a film about Hawkeye, or a film about, you could do lots of different things.
What about Captain Britain? He wasn't a particularly popular character. Brian Braddock.
You know what I think they should do? I'd love to see an up to date Cannonball Run. I'd love to see
with a CGI Burt, obviously, because
just do a Cannonball Run. You've got to get from A to B as quick as you can. I don't
not
care.
Not from A to B, from sea to shining sea.
Well, yeah. But I don't care how you get there. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you get up to on the way. Just get from point A to point B as fast as you can.
It's not what you do; it's how you do it.
Absolutely. So that would be quite cool as a bit of a quirky sort of comedy offshoot. Let's see what they're going to do with that. Be class.
Yeah, Andy.
When you asked the question, I'm sure there's somewhere where I've always thought, they need to do a film of that, but I can't really think of anything. I mean, maybe game related. There's The Witcher, but they've done a TV show, so film would be good, or a trilogy or whatever. But Cannonball Run's a really good shout. Yeah.
I'll be honest. The one I had noted down was a live action version of Futurama. With I love that TV. I love the cartoon. But
Simpsons. Could you do a live action Simpsons? Could you get someone to play the kid? I don't know.
I think Futurama would be better than that. But to be honest, I think I want to see Cannonball Run 4, because they did a third one, Cannonball Run Fever with John Candy. Terrible film.
Yeah.
What was that? What was the Rowan Atkinson film where it's sort of like?
Oh yeah. Dude, that's one we're gonna have to add in afterwards.
Great Race or something.
Yeah, but that is based on another earlier film. Actually, the original film is fantastic, but that one is actually fairly good. I'll give you that.
Don't know it. But yeah, that would be like some sort of updated Cannonball Run would be classic.
Absolutely. So, anything else that anybody wants to add before we're done on movies? I think we're going to be around about the 2-hour mark for this podcast. This is a long one.
I'm only going to. I'll mention this just because I've sort of mentioned it throughout the last 2 hours, but I'm going to say it just because people can shout me down. My top 5 films: Shawshank, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Seven, Usual Suspects. There you go. It's out there. People want to shout me down. I'm happy to argue the point. If people want to come on the podcast and argue against me on any of them, happy. Not a problem.
That's it. Or at Raymas Windstorm at Twitter. Direct your hate to him. That's fine.
Yeah, bring
PO
it
box.
On. Bring it on. Bring it on, people. I'm happy to defend any of those films.
Andy?
No. I don't have a top list. There's too many. I'll be here all day, I think. But yeah, nothing to add either.
Cool. Well, I think I don't doubt that we'll probably end up doing another movies one again. Hopefully, we'll get a fair bit of feedback from this one. I don't doubt that we will. So next week we are hopefully going to be talking to Chris from the Mia, sampling some of his beer. And actually, guys, I think we normally record this on a Tuesday. Is it not your birthday next Tuesday?
It is my birthday next Tuesday. You're right.
So we'll look at that whether we record it there, but we'll wish you a happy birthday in advance.
Thank you very much. We'll wait and see whether it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday recording, maybe, but we'll wait and see.
That's it. The elder statesman of the podcast, as he is.
Yeah, all right. I'm like 2 weeks older than you, dude. It's like not a massive issue, is it?
I'm still hearing older. So, guys, hopefully next week will be, if it's not the mayor, we'll be talking about something else. Don't you worry. So, if we'd like to say our goodbyes, Andy.
See you later.
Gaz.
See you guys. Been great to be back with you this week. As I say, shame I missed last week. Look forward to speaking to you next week. Yeah. Cheers. See you later.
Been great to have you back as well, dude. And until next week, when no doubt we'll have plenty of stuff to talk about, take care.